Well, folks, at this point, we should be asking ourselves when, not if, when Alberta will begin the process to leave Canada. Now, whether they join the US or they decide they want to form their own country, they want to be independent, every day it seems more and more likely, it seems more probable, every single day, that Alberta will eventually leave Canada. But just when will they start these processes? But today we are going to talk about why Alberta must, and I mean must, leave Canada and become a part of the US. Whether it is as a state or as a territory, they must absolutely join the United States. Because here's a fact. Alberta produces 80% of Canada's oil. They produce about 4.2 to 4.4 million barrels per day. And about 70% of it, and about 70% of the gas that comes from Canada. They generate roughly $120 billion annually in revenue from the oil and gas industry. They contribute roughly 15, 16, 17, 18% of Canada's GDP. Meanwhile, they only maintain about 9, 10, 11% of the overall population. And then you want to talk about, food. They produce about a quarter of the beef that comes from Canada, and they produce about a third of the wheat that's grown in Canada. In Canada, as a country, relies on Alberta. They rely on them through the equalization payments. From 2007 to 2024, Alberta roughly sent $250 billion net. This is net from what they sent in versus what they received. $240 billion in net fiscal contributions to the equalization system, which 100% subsidizes places like Quebec. It's like, and this is my big issue that I have about this. Whenever Quebec, who they rely heavily, they're getting from 2007 to 2022, they got about $330 billion net. They net $330 billion from equalization payments. But anytime Quebec decides that, we're gonna hold a referendum to leave Canada, everyone in Ottawa, what do we got to do to appease them? They appease them instantly. They do everything they can to appease them. But then when Alberta, who is a net contributor of over 15 to 20 billion, every year's different, but roughly about $20 billion a year, $20 billion a year, and they talk about leaving, and it basically is just kind of brushed aside. No, it's just not going to happen. In liberal policies like the carbon tax and Bill C-69 that cost people from Alberta and businesses from Alberta $10 billion. We're talking billions of dollars every year. Every year. Not only other companies invest in Alberta, but revenues that could be generated. Instead, they're paying taxes. Instead, they're limited on the amount that they can produce. And a 2025 win for the Liberals, with Mark Carney now as the Prime Minister going forward, it raises the fear of new taxes on oil exports to fund. There's been a lot of conversation around the idea of putting a oil tax and gas tax on these companies when they sell oil or gas to subsidize manufacturing throughout the rest of Canada, to reshore manufacturing because of the issues with the United States, because of trade issues, all the such. That's what they're thinking about doing. They want to raise it like Alberta, they export $150 to $200 billion in exports every single year. No, excuse me, to the U.S. I believe that's to the U.S. $150 billion to $200 billion to the U.S. every single year they send. And now they want to, they slap on a 1% tax. You're looking at $1.5 billion, a $1.5 billion tax. And there is a national unity crisis. And after this Liberal victory, there's going to be an even bigger national unity crisis. Premier Danielle Smith of Alberta warns of this national unity crisis. She's been warning about this since before the election took place. And that she laid out demands for, I believe, 8 or 9 different, policies that she wants to see repealed. That there will be a national unity crisis if these are not repealed. This includes things like scrapping the net zero power regulations, abolishing Canada's wide ban on single-use plastics, and ensuring the establishment of oil and gas corridors in all corners of Canada, which would facilitate the transportation of oil and gas through multiple different parts of the country. And obviously, there's about 9 demands that she had for Mark Carney when they had a meeting earlier this year. It's just embarrassing. It is embarrassing. We want to talk about why do we want some place like Canada? This is why. Right here. This is exactly why we want Canada. Look at, or not Canada, I should say Alberta. Look at all this oil here. And it's kind of funny because, Alberta, they fund all of Canada, but yet the rest of Canada just spits in their face while they do it. They want their money, but they want to destroy the economic opportunities that provide for the rest of Canada. And we're not talking about a little bit of money. We're talking about over almost $250 billion over the last 15 years. $250 billion. And the reality is that like 70% of Alberta's exports go to the U.S. And joining the U.S. would eliminate trade barriers and would boost GDP. There have been some estimates that just realigning and becoming part of the U.S. would boost GDP anywhere from like 3 to like 6 or 7 percentage points. Instantly. Just instantly. In U.S. states like Texas, where they have a lot lighter regulations and have similar economies to Alberta, Texas's GDP grew in like 23. I think it grew by like 6%. Meanwhile, Alberta's grew by like a point. Like, that's sad. That is really sad. And there has been a surge in separatist rhetoric and movement, and this liberal victory in 2025 deepens this alienation. When you have 24% of people from Alberta believing that they're respected by the rest of the country. 24% versus 52% believe that nationally. From this Angus Reid poll in 2025, 30% of Albertans would vote to leave Canada if Liberals won. If Liberals won. And look at this. Quebec, 30%, Saskatchewan, Alberta, 30 and 33% respectively. But if Quebec wants anything, Ottawa just bends over backwards for them. Alberta wants anything, screw you. We don't really care. And we know it's conservative voters that are driving the separatist sentiment. They feel shut out. They feel like they pay way more in taxes. They fund the pension programs. They want to talk about how there's free childcare and, low tuition or no tuition universities throughout Canada. But you know who pays for that? You're looking at them right here and right here, actually. You're looking at them. Because there is a serious threat to national unity, and there always has been. People from Alberta have always felt separate from Canada. And now we know that Alberta's premier, Danielle Smith, is doing everything she can. They actually loosened what it takes in order to hold a referendum, the threshold that needs to be met. They lowered it from 600,000 voters in 90 days to 300,000 in 120 days. And really, it's 20% of the voters that voted in the most recent federal election is technically what it is. But those are what the numbers are set as of right now. And, Trump, he makes the joke about the 51st state and Governor Trudeau, and now it'd be Governor Carney. We don't want Canada. We don't want all of Canada. This is what we want: Alberta, maybe Saskatchewan. And I shouldn't say maybe. We would take Saskatchewan. Like, absolutely. Are you kidding me? In a freaking heartbeat. These are states that are going to be much similar. It's like, I feel like right now it's kind of hard to judge, like, how conservative would these provinces be if they became part of the United States? But I think if they became part of the United States, a lot of people would shift to the right. They would see the great policies. And especially when it comes to like freedom of speech, it's ridiculous. Like the UK, Canada, Europe, they've been just horrible with free speech. It's been terrible. Arresting grandmas for posting something on Facebook. And if you don't think it's happening everywhere. It's happening every day in the UK. Every day. But the reality is that there are cultural ties with the U.S. too. Alberta has much over this, cowboy culture, the individualism, which is much similar to the culture that you might find in Montana or Wyoming. And I hope Trump keeps pushing this 51st state crap. I hope he niches down to Alberta. I'd be fine giving Alberta a deal, let's bribe them, $10,000 a person, $20,000, $30,000 a person. Sure, let's do it. Let's do it right now. And the U.S. has, 3.5 million job openings in the energy and tech sector in 2024, which would appeal to Alberta's youth. Alberta's youth has a lot of issues when it comes to career prospects. Economic freedom, the ability, individual rights, individual liberties. And younger people from Canada, especially Alberta, show a lot stronger sentiment towards that field. They have a lot stronger sentiment towards it. These separatist lean-ins, there's no doubt about it. But there are some challenges ahead. There's a lot of challenges if that's going to happen. First, secession requires Canada's constitutional approval. In U.S. congressional assent, it's like you'd probably have to get, both bodies of government in Canada and the U.S. to agree to this. And of course, then there's these First Nations that are citing treaty rights and you can also look at the reality that, you look at this poll, 30% want to leave, but that also means 70% want to stay. But I think it would be different if the Liberals really clamped down on these green policies. I think you could see this number skyrocket. And then if the U.S. might be able to, kind of bribe some of these people with some cash, $10,000 a citizen, $20,000 a citizen in your pocket, I think that could definitely help it. But you also have to have a clear majority, not just a 51% or 50% majority. You need at least like a 55, 56. It's not clearly defined, but that's what's going to need to happen. But Alberta's, they have a lot of infrastructure in place with the U.S. It makes sense to come to the U.S. They have trade routes, railroad routes, pipelines with the U.S. Yes, it's Canadian infrastructure. Let's buy it. We buy Alberta. It becomes our infrastructure then. And they have the infrastructure with the U.S. Most of their trade goes south to the U.S. It does not go east and west to Canada or north. And this separatism really reflects clear and real frustrations within the people from Alberta. And I think legal issues, legal battles do make it a long shot. But ultimately, the U.S. is the perfect place for the people of Alberta. We want the people of Alberta. We don't want all of Canada. It would be a liberal SHIT hole. We want Alberta. We want Saskatchewan. We're willing to make a deal. Let's make a deal on this. Because they're vital in Canada's economy. But then when Quebec threatens secession, they appease them. Alberta, Saskatchewan threaten it. Yeah, screw you. We're just going to take your $20 trillion a year or $20 billion a year and give you the middle finger. And like we said, the infrastructure and the strong ties to the U.S. makes it much more appealing. But that's the real question. Could Alberta join the U.S. or is Canada, it's just a long shot? Let me know your thoughts down below. I'd really like to know what your thoughts are on this idea here. Because I believe that Alberta must leave Canada and come to the U.S. I don't think independent country is realistic. I just don't. I think that if they're going to leave, they're going to go to the U.S. It's already going to be hard. Make it easier for yourself. And you can see people are out in the streets. They don't like what's going on. Albertans, they feel crushed by this liberal election win. They're going to clamp down on green energy policies. It's just ridiculous. But let me know your thoughts down below. That's going to wrap things up for today, folks. Drop down below, hit that subscribe button. Make sure you never miss another video from us again in the future, and we will catch you next time.